Today we've got really a single item agenda. Our main focus is going to be very much looking at the Kirklees digital strategy. Before we start, for the benefit of the people who may be watching this at home or may watch the webcast of this later, if we could just introduce the councillors and co-optees who are part of the panel, and we will introduce our main speaker who's going to be introducing the topic of the digital strategy. So if we could start with you, please, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Bill Armour, Kirkburton Ward.
Andrew Bird, co-optee.
Victor Murgatroyd Goka.
Harpreet Ashbrow Ward. Councillor Judith Hughes, Almonbury Ward.
Mark Mercer, co-optee.
Martin Bolt, Murfield.
Sue Weston, Strategic Lead for Business and Skills.
Right, matters arising. I've three things actually. First thing really, which is something which is definitely on the minutes of the last meeting, is the issue of a Brexit update. We did say at the last meeting that we would find that useful. Spent quite a bit of time talking to officers about that, and I think the feeling was, given the fact that we didn't give them a great deal of time, and also the continuing uncertainty, it was felt that it would be difficult to bring something to the meeting which would be useful really for us to discuss. So we've asked if we could come back to that for the next meeting. Hopefully, I'm not sure if things will be clearer, but let's hope so. But there may be more that we can actually share at the next meeting. So apologies for that, but I just felt, to be fair to officers, that was the best course of action. Not really on the minutes, but there are things that have cropped up in the minutes of previous meetings. The town centre strategy, that's something that we had a presentation on from Simon Taylor, we discussed, but I think the feeling was that we needed to do more to properly scrutinise what the plans were both for Huddersfield Town Centre and for Dewsbury. So we have had some further discussions following on from that. And I think where we are at the moment is that the master plan is due to come out shortly. I think over the next month, 6 weeks or so, we should have the master plan. But given the fact we're then going to be in the purdah period before the local election, the view that's been taken is that it would be better to focus on that as a single item for the first meeting in June after the local elections have taken place and committee membership has been sorted out. I think we've discussed the fact that we also feel that this is such an important issue that it shouldn't just be discussed by the people in this body. We have got co-optees, but that is not representing all sections of opinion around what should be happening. And I think one of the things that's come from our discussion of things like the economic strategy is that we as a committee believe that it's really important that we involve the community, businesses, third sector and so on in the process of putting together policies, strategies, plans, whether it's for the economy or for what's happening within the town centre. So the view is, I think, that we have the first meeting, which will be very much a kind of standard meeting like this, but then explore an alternative type of meeting where we'll have a much wider representation, possibly an informal meeting, so it wouldn't be a meeting like this, but it would be an opportunity to look at all the different opinions that are coming in from the many groups who are carrying work out around this kind of area. So the plan is to carry out further discussions with cabinet members and with officers to look at what would be the best approach, the best format to do something like that. Anybody any comments on that? Yes.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so the plan would be that, so you have some further discussions and then come back to the committee with a timetable and a remit and in terms of, because I really agree with you about that, a wider kind of consultation discussion thing taking place after June. So, but would we as a committee get a chance to comment on the structure and the content of that and, the shape that would take?
Yes. I think the idea is that we would discuss that and then share it with you for further comment. Okay. Right, the final thing, which really is something that's happened since the last meeting, which I think it's important that we report back on, is the visit that Harpreet and myself took part in to Dewsbury Market with a whole team of officers, cabinet members and so on. And the idea was to look at what's happening in Dewsbury, Barnsley, sorry. We were going to Dewsbury, we didn't. Thank you. Well, my Yorkshire town knowledge is slipping there. To Barnsley, yeah, to have a look at what's happening with the market. Really interesting visit. Very different town in terms of the population, its relationship with its hinterland. Very interesting that they're spending £180 million just on the market and the immediate surrounding area. One interesting fact was that they had worked in partnership with developers in the early phase of looking at this, because it's probably been going on for the last 15, 20 years thinking about this, but they've moved very much towards a process that is now controlled by the council. They're obviously working with architects and building developers and things, but the thinking behind what is happening is very much under the control of the council. A lot of the money has gone back into rebuilding a new, much improved market. Big focus on the food court areas and the public open spaces around it. Yeah, it's interesting. Harpreet, you were on the visit as well. I don't know if you want to comment on the visit.
Yeah, and I know Councillor McBride is here. He's here. I can't see him. There he is. Yeah, he was on the visit as well, and obviously with Carol and colleagues were along. And I was really impressed by what we saw. It was a really good discussion between officers and councillors, so it's really good sharing between the two. The building, the market itself is fantastic. I think it's a very modern space, and I do think the relationship with the market in Barnsley is obviously different to ours. You know, the market has a much more, I think, central place in a much more compact town centre. So, you know, there's definitely some learning we can take from what they've done there. I think the relationship that they have in terms of the independent retail sector that they have there is much larger, and they rely less on you know, sort of well-known commercial shops as well. So I would just say I was really impressed, and I think the point that you made about where the council's kind of taken over the reign of the project as well, it meant that there was one sort of vision, one leadership behind it, and they were able to progress really. So I think lots of learning. I think a lot of us came away being able to see, I think, a structure like that, and it felt quite positive from that.
Peter, would you like to say something? Yeah.
Yep. I just echo what you two have said. It was very impressive. Impressed by the ambition of Barnsley and the fact that they're using their very daring. And bear in mind, we're doing much the same thing. We're borrowing significant sums of money to reinvest in regeneration. Local authorities are going about this in rather different ways. Some are being, what should we say, super ambitious, to the point where the government is saying, hang about, that is our money that you're borrowing, because essentially it's backed by the government. So we're trying to be, we're playing a hand which is a little more cautious than Barnsley, but nonetheless we are intending to borrow, well, you saw the figures from yesterday, £250 million, but that's going to be spread throughout the whole of Kirklees. And in addition, you may remember from yesterday, another £150,000, which is, £150 million, which is coming from other sort of like West Yorkshire and central government grants. But so our scale is big, but it's spread more widely. I mean, Barnsley, if you look at Barnsley Metropolitan Borough or Wakefield Metropolitan, there's a much more focus on the town as opposed to Huddersfield and Kirklees. Huddersfield's a third of Kirklees, not the totality of Kirklees. So all those things have got to be put into balance. And every time, of course, when we make points about, you know, we need to focus on Huddersfield, you get an echo in the north saying, and what about the north, and what about Dewsbury, and so on. And you've got to weigh all those factors. However, coming back to market, the market will be a much bigger feature of the regeneration of Dewsbury, and traditionally, Dewsbury market's been always bigger than the Huddersfield market, it's traditional. Nonetheless, we do plan to regenerate our markets, probably with the main focus on the open market, and that policy is still in train until we put together all the pieces of the master plan again, which will be rolled out, not with the things sort of signed, sealed and delivered where you can't have a comment. It'll give you a rough idea or a reasonable idea of the way in which we are planning to develop the town of both Huddersfield and Dewsbury, with a real chance for other people to make contributions to their views before we ultimately decide exactly where the investment will take place.
Right, thank you. So I think it was an interesting exercise. We can't replicate what they're doing, but I think the things that we should take from it are the fact that they've had real vision. The council is giving very strong leadership, and they do know their own community. They know what the strengths of the community are. They've done a lot of work to find out what people would like for the future, but they've also been forward-looking. So it's about continuity, but it's also about change moving forward. Right, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get there. I think the officer who's in charge of Barnsley markets is somebody that's gone through the Kirklees training system, very closely linked to our markets, if I remember right. So we should be able to draw on that. But one thing, notwithstanding the two major markets that have been referred to, I think we ought to be recognising that things have changed since market legislation came in place, when there were very restrictive practices, which I'm surprised are still allowed to continue to this day, that you can't hold a market within something like 6.2 miles or something. It was the distance that somebody could carry or walk a pig, historically. So we should be allowing our communities to operate farmers' markets, other types, to try and revitalise things in their area. So, yeah, we've got a closed market hall, haven't been knocked down yet in Heckmondwike. If there are community groups, for example, there, who wanted to do car bootses, tabletops, farmers' markets, similar in Murfield and other places, we should be facilitating that, not using the ancient market laws to say that they can't do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think we have to be responsive to our communities and look for those kind of opportunities. Yeah. Okay, thanks. So,
yeah, if I could just quickly say, I think, you know, Martin's made some really good points there as well. Just a couple of things from the visit that I remembered was the engagement that they did. I know Carol remembers a lot about the shop that was set up, wasn't it, in terms of so people could go in and see the plans. I thought that was quite good in the town centre. And then, oh my God, there was another point I was going to make, but I've totally forgotten. I'll come back to you. I'll tell you later, I've forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think when we carry out the engagement that Peter's just referred to, we'll need to look at different kinds of engagement to link to different groups of people. Yes.
I remembered now, sorry. Just in terms of the local wealth building, I think the work that we do potentially with the markets really fits in with that programme of inclusive growth and keeping the money within Kirklees, you know, supporting our local residents.
Okay, on to item 2. Are there anybody got any interests that they wish to declare? Okay. Item 3, admission of the public. This is a meeting in public. It's being webcast. People would be able to come in and watch this meeting if they so wished. Right. Okay, so we'll move on to the main item for today, which is the Kirklees digital strategy. So over to Sue.
Well, thank you for inviting Jess and I to speak to you about the draft Kirklees digital plan. Jess and I are working with the Kirklees Digital Partnership to prepare and then subsequently deliver what's currently in draft. So we're really pleased to be able to be here to get you involved in like an early sight of what we're preparing. So what I'm aiming to do today is to just set out the background and the context of the digital landscape, share the high-level action plan as it stands at the moment, and just try and illustrate how we're trying to take account of all the national, regional and local strategies. Okie dokes. So just to set the digital landscape in context, it's become, according to the National Infrastructure Commission, it's one of the essential services for the future now. You can see there's lots of stats around how the global internet traffic's increasing, how connected devices are outnumbering the population, data traffic's increasing year on year, and, you know, in terms of all the access to video and TV services, how it's more and more apparent that you need to have really high speed megabits per second. All these different phrases, by the way, we put a glossary, I don't know if you noticed, in the paper, because actually you can trip yourself up trying to remember all these acronyms. So, I do apologise if I strip into, go into using these acronyms. So this is sort of the landscape that we're in, and I suppose the market is forcing individuals in our communities to have to draw into these services, and that can be a bit of a struggle from a skills and employment point of view, because you can see that final bullet point is about the fact that in the next 20 years, 90% of future jobs will require digital skills. So it's not just about that connectivity, it's also about the individuals themselves. So let's have a think about what the regional, local and national policies sort of saying. So in the paper, we popped some links into the main strategies and policies that we're looking at and trying to ensure that we're aligning the plan to. Clearly, these plans around transformation of broadband, many of them align well with each other because they're talking about the fact that we need the connectivity. There's always a theme around connectivity. There tends to be a theme around digital skills and inclusion, and there always tends to be a theme around the sectors that are being impacted upon from the digital transformation taking place. And also on a city-region level, there's the strategic economic plan, which is setting out the importance of digital transformation. There's a digital framework that's recently been consulted on. And also we have got the WICA transport strategy as well. So those sort of three regional strategies are looking at how really we can transform and accelerate growth through digital infrastructure and get our smart technologies fit for purpose for the future. We've got a great example of some regional work that we're doing that's around key route networks and trying to ensure that while working with WICA, that we're trying to get ready for that sort of smart transport solutions that will emerge in the future, and sort of machine-to-machine sort of communication and connectivity. Then we got the Kirklees Economic Strategy refresh as well. And again, as did with the last strategy, digital infrastructure is coming out really strong in terms of priority 4 of that strategy. And I think you have had a presentation on the draft strategy? Yeah, so in there, if you do recall, it mentions and thinks about that fibre, the city fibre investment, that 30 million investment, and it also considers how we can make our ducts be an open network for some of our strategic employment sites. So these types of things are really what we're going to, the digital plan's going to build on. But I suppose what we've got to be careful of is that we don't just think about sort of, like, say, the connectivity alone, because the bottom bullet point is all around, like, those essential skills for digital and how that links to inclusive growth. So highlighting how important it is for adults to have the digital skills that means they can benefit from and contribute to that world in the future. So what is that current and future position that we're in? Where are we? So there's a lovely table in section 1.11 that talked about the current and future position. And so you can see we've had old legacy equipment, copper equipment, everybody's connected, 60% take it up. Clearly that'll decrease. We're on, in terms of super fast West Yorkshire, in terms of that connectivity there, 96.6% are connected at the moment, and 40% are taking up that coverage. And we're still on a journey with that because we're going for another contract, which hopefully we'll be able to target some of our harder to reach areas, so most likely our rural areas. I might refer to Jess in points to just check out different areas. But I'm correct, aren't I? Yeah, it will probably be more targeted at those harder to reach, which hopefully will push that 96% further up to 98% as the slide suggests. And then we move on to sort of the gigabit connectivity. This is the city fibre and full fibre connection. Again, yeah, we're only connected around 2% at the moment, but clearly this investment that City Fibre are making in Huddersfield is going to be pushing that coverage up for us. And we hope that we will be able to attract other suppliers who are interested in other areas of Kirklees to be able to deliver. And hopefully you'll be able to see that in our plan in terms of how we're going to try and stimulate that investment. Thinking about the mobile indoor, so thinking about Wi-Fi and the 5G, we don't want to forget about that because ultimately we can concentrate a lot on the connectivity and getting sort of the gigabit connectivity, the full fibre, but actually we can't forget about some of the other areas that we need to invest in. And like I say, I think that for me, we'll be thinking about free Wi-Fi in town centres and thinking about keeping our the emerging landscape of 5G and what that world might bring. But of course, a key barrier at the bottom is digital exclusion. So a little bit like keeping our eye on 5G and free Wi-Fi, we can't forget those residents that are not able to demonstrate those 5 basic skills and haven't been able to access that connectivity. And this is where my other hat, when I came to visit you, gosh, it was some time ago, wasn't it, to talk about the post-16 employment and skills plan. That's sort of where that plan sits in terms of thinking about increasing digital literacy skills for people so that they're able to engage in using devices, etc. But also how important it is to think about wage earning so that people can afford to pay. And then the other side of things is probably thinking about how the business team and some of our members of my team who are also supporting businesses to be more resilient so they can engage in this agenda. So it is quite a complex area of work to be considering. So what is helping us to actually deliver on these ambitions around digital? Because all the detail of these pots are they're in the actual report that are written. I wasn't going to propose to go through them in detail, but would anybody like to ask any questions about these, or can I take the report as read, or yeah? Is that okay? Brilliant.
Something.
Yeah.
You referred to the Huddersfield thing. I can't exaggerate the importance of that. The money is already there to develop Huddersfield as having the fastest internet connections in the world within 2 years. Now, that linked to the fact you've got this massive programme of Network Rail to upgrade Transpennine, and a big fibre optic cable is going in as part of that. So Huddersfield could be in that position very quickly, and talking to a guy representing City Fibre the other day, he was telling me, and when that's completed, they'll be looking to move on to Dewsbury and then wind it out still further. So we're in a unique position with an updated plan, local plan, with this and the investment that's going into all of the key networks. I'm talking about the road networks, the rail networks, and now super fast broadband. I mean, as I said, the best in the world. It must be hugely attractive to business to have all those things coming together in a situation where you've got a local plan which is completely updated.
Thank you. So let's get on to the plan, because I know you'll want to have to chat to us and ask questions. So yeah, the draft plan, and I must emphasise it is a draft plan because we forgot to put draft on the Appendix 2 that we gave to you, so apologies for that. Our ambition is to stimulate affordable, accessible, appropriate digital infrastructure and skills development. So Appendix 2 we attached to the report that we sent through to you. But this is the very, very, very high level plan on a page. And clearly we have our ambition. It is supporting those three shared outcomes. You can see them highlighted in green on the slide there. Aspire and achieve a sustainable economy and efficient and effective service. Clearly it also indirectly supports other key shared outcomes as well, but they're the three main outcomes. Our objectives really for trying to deliver this plan is about strengthening and supporting supplier investment, creating a resilient and future-proofed network to ensure that we're using connectivity as a catalyst for investment and innovation, helping to ensure that we're developing personal life and employment skills for individuals in collaboration with the Employment Skills Plan, and then thinking about how we can collaborate to drive local, regional and national policy and investment. So the Appendix 2 shows you the 4 priority areas that we have drafted out, and those areas are about stimulating and creating strong leadership and collaboration. They're about stimulating investment to develop that connectivity. They're about extending the network, and it's about stimulating demand from key stakeholders. Yeah, again, I wasn't going to go through the detail of this plan because obviously it would take quite an extended amount of time, but happy to take questions.
Yeah, and I think it is really important that at this stage this is just a draft, because I always think about when we have these meetings, what's the point of it? Oh, very nice, having an afternoon, having a nice chat about things, but I think there has got to be some outcome, and I hope the outcome of our discussion is to perhaps make a few suggestions that possibly may be able to make this a better plan going forward. Right, so over to you for questions.
Yeah, I've just got a question about where there isn't broadband now or there's poor connectivity, because you just said rural areas. Well, I'm in the Almonbury ward and we've got quite a few areas in Almonbury that don't have connectivity to broadband. Is there anything we can look at to see which areas you've identified? And I'm talking particularly about Lepton and Bennybridge.
If you look at the Kirklees district as a whole, there are a number of not spots, so areas where there isn't the connectivity. We are trying to address that through things like the Superfast West Yorkshire and York programme. Some of that funding is DEFRA funding, where we can only concentrate on the more rural areas, through Contract 3, if we get it, of course. The rest of the funding enables us to work with semi-urban areas. Again, it's business-focused, but it allows us to spread that a little bit further. And the other part of it is, whilst we don't have the funding ourselves, we are trying to influence suppliers to invest in those areas. The trouble is, they're not commercially viable, and that's the difficulty, yeah. So there are schemes available that we promote and can help communities to take on board. One of them is mentioned in here, which is the Openreach Community Fibre programme, where communities themselves can approach Openreach and try and address those not spots. There is the Better Broadband Scheme, which is a government scheme where if you've got less than 2 megabits per second, which is just horrendous, you may be able to get grant funding towards that. And there's the coming in from 2020 is the Universal Service Obligation. So if you've got less than 10 megabytes, I think it is, you can request Openreach or whatever the suppliers are to improve your speeds. We currently know where the not spot areas are, but the information is commercially sensitive, so we're not able to share that information. But work is going on at a regional level to try and unpick that and make us more able to use that information to work with you guys and communities to try and address those not spots.
as Jess will know, I've a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this, and I have been a major pest here, haven't I? Because my ward, I think, has got some of the worst areas for that. And you're right, Judy, if it's not the little farmhouses on top of the hills, it's sometimes the centre of the villages. So I think we need to work hard to address that. And I think where City Fibre is coming in, because your ward, like mine, will be part of that, we need to ensure that those areas that have had a really bad deal get a better deal. We need to keep up the pressure, I think. Right.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. Yeah, I really agreed with the, you know, you're tying it in with the economic development. Obviously, it's completely crucial, and I suppose from a historical aspect, it's clear, you know, when you think of how industry developed, this in effect is like your new canal network, isn't it, or your new railway network. It's that kind of analogy, which you actually use, the analogy in the paper, which I thought was really good and apt. I guess I just wanted to ask some questions. I mean, you know, Bob said we'd had a presentation, and you said, about Kirklees' economic strategy, and I think there was discussion of a digital innovation zone in that. If perhaps you could just say a little bit more about what that would look like, please, and you know, how it would be joined up, I guess, with the rest of the strategy and this strategy. I just wanted to focus, because obviously a key part of this is on speed, on you know, connectivity and so on. And I just wanted to kind of focus on one particular aspect which did kind of raise a question with me, and that's if you look at point 1.19 on page 13. So the third bullet point down, where it discusses the Network Rail Transpennine Fibre project. And I agree, I think, you know, Peter was mentioning it as well, it's a tremendous opportunity. And I guess if we're going to make the most, we obviously have to create locations that are attractive to business. So they've got to be close proximity to the fibre network and provide rack space where they can kind of provide that. And I mean, perhaps you could tell me, but my understanding is that this major network is actually, it's crossing points with IX Manchester and IX Leeds, you know, those kind of exchanges. So I suppose my question really is there a plan where we would be kind of creating a location here within Kirklees where we actually connect into that, you know, within the borough, and perhaps maybe in more than one place as well, potentially. But not just that, how to do this, because, you know, I think a lot of people on this committee are pretty passionate about the idea of local wealth building. And, you know, when I looked into it, there are examples such as the Thameside Digital Infrastructure Cooperative, where actually, you know, in effect, what they've done is the local authority is working as an active partner within a co-op with other, you know, public sector and private kind of users. So I was just asking if any work's been kind of done around that, because that would be a classic way of linking the digital strategy with the Kirklees economic strategy in terms of local wealth building, which, you know, they've obviously done in other parts of the country, so it does seem possible. So, yeah, that was it.
Perhaps if I take the Digital Innovation Zone, and then I might bring Jess in a little bit to talk about meet me points, am I right in thinking around, yeah? Yeah, the Digital Innovation Zone is the university thinking about how we can utilise their connectivity and think about analytics, digital data, and then those innovations through manufacturing. I mean, to be honest, that is the level of knowledge that I've got around that being in the sort of Kirklees economic strategy. But clearly the university has such strengths in terms of sort of its access through to sort of, I don't know, in terms of processing data and analytics, and then its additive manufacturing strengths and the importance of digital in terms of being able to utilise those strengths. So clearly it's going to be quite a big development. But yeah, the university, I need to be able to get some information from them for you. But I can try and get as much as I can and perhaps share that back through as an action. In terms of the Transpennine Fibre project, if Jess could just provide as much as she's able to on that.
There you go. Yes, so we are in discussions with Network Rail around what Sue's referred to as meet me points along the route. What they would, and we're looking at 3 potential locations, one in South Kirklees, one in Huddersfield and one in North Kirklees. The South Kirklees one would be advantageous because that would enable us to then work with suppliers to link the more rural communities back into that fibre spine. The ones in Huddersfield and Dewsbury obviously are working both the same way, but the extra advantage of those particular locations is that we as a council would really benefit from linking those 2 destinations. We've got the river right in the middle of our district, which causes no end of issues when it comes to connectivity. Having that resilient fibre spine along the railway network would be just hugely advantageous. So those are the points that we're working at the minute. But it is not early days, but it's quite early on in the discussions, so we need to see how that progresses.
If I could just comment before we move on, because I think another, as well as the link with Network Rail, you've also got the potential mutual co-op approach to this. And one thing that is really interesting is that the government actually do strongly back this kind of model. So I went over to have a look at what's happening in Tameside, and there was a representative there from DCMS, who incidentally had lived in Hunley at some point, so she knew this area as well. And they're actually really pushing this as a model that they think is a good way of extending super-fast broadband, gigabit broadband into different areas. Yeah. Bill. Then
Just on the Network Rail, obviously I've got Kirkburton Ward and we've got the Huddersfield-Sheffield line. So would that help us out in that area? Because we do have some knock spots out there. Thank you.
I think the honest answer is I don't know. I think unlikely, yeah.
Right, I'll put my railway geek head on. It's linked to the cabling that they need to put in to make all these new generation signalling systems work. So I suppose it does depend on the degree to which they're going to spend some money to upgrade that line. If they do that, then it is very possible. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm very pleased to read all about this. I mean, it seems necessary, but I'm not sure it's sufficient, is my challenge. I was really scared by the statistics which said 82% of internet traffic will be streaming video content, which is sort of people on their sofas at home, not economically active, watching the telly. So what I think I'd like to see more of in here is much more about skills development and entrepreneurship, because we want the wealth left here, not in Silicon Valley. We want more of it than just people driving white vans because they've got an Amazon order to deliver. You know, it's about having people who are able to use the gigabyte capacity to build businesses here. And it doesn't. That might be somewhere else in the bigger plan, but I think a stronger connection between this and that would be much more helpful, just to really emphasise that we're about wealth in the towns or in the district rather than the infrastructure. I mean, City Fibre are making a right mess of town at the moment, digging holes. It's nice to see it's a local firm digging the holes, or it seems to be, got a local phone number. But that's only very short-term economic benefit. The long-term economic benefit is about people with the right digital skills and the right entrepreneurship developing new businesses using the gigabyte connectivity. We want the next Amazon joke to be here. That's what this is all about, isn't it? Creating opportunities for new businesses. And I don't sort of see that really being emphasised enough in what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think there's a really key questions. I think they're vital if this is going to really transform.
I suppose what I just want to say is absolutely thank you for mentioning that, because I think you'd expect that to see perhaps the entrepreneurship would come out in, say, our business plan and our delivery plan for that. But I think there's much more we could do to strengthen that in the digital plan, and think about, like you say, that we're going back to sort of times where more cottage industries where people are going to be working from their own homes, aren't we? Gig industry. Gig economy rather. So your point is really well made, and yeah, it doesn't come out as strong as we could make it in this. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're attempting to do that in a modest way. Yourself and I are part of a working party which Council has set up to link with industry and to plan for the skills which will be necessary, given what we know will be the big forces for regeneration in the future. Thus, to look at the consequences of this massive investment by Network Rail, digital industries, the growth of the care industry. I think I mentioned this at the last time you met. And we're meeting on a regular basis and working parties to look at, are the courses in the colleges appropriate, relevant to those future needs? Are the young people aware of the opportunities that there might be? Are the schools showing sufficient understanding and knowledge to point the kids in the right direction when we can tell them very clearly where exactly the growth is going to be? And as far as, the City Fibre are doing a lot more than just putting cable in the ground. They are going round talking to local industries, particularly on Leeds Road, like to Syngenta, to ask them, are they interested? And of course they are, in these opportunities to be very quickly linked up. So it's not by accident that their hub point is on Leeds Road, and their immediate point of contact is going to be all the businesses along Leeds Road and leading on towards Ravensthorpe, where 90% of Kirklees businesses are.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Peter. I think we've got that group around railways and the construction there. There's obviously a lot of work happening with the health things. I think we probably do need something focusing in on the digital skills of the future. Because I think, so when you're talking about a digital innovation zone, that could be a physical area, but I think it would be more meaningful if it was about a group of, as you say, the colleges and the universities working together, the schools linking in with business, really making sure that we're developing the appropriate skills that are going to provide the high-quality jobs for the future and will help to transform our business. That's really what it's about. So.
If I can just build on that, the Leeds City Region Digital Framework has a strand of activity that relates just to that area of work that you're talking about. And so the officer that's responsible for delivering the post-16 employment and skills plan was engaged in the consultation for that. And I see that emerging when we see how it's been launched in a couple of months, I think, isn't it, the working group for those different strands of the Leeds City Region Digital Framework. So, yeah, we'll see more of that coming. Yeah, thank you.
It's great that we're doing this, and it's just sort of trying to make sure that we are maximising the impact it has, and trying to make sure that as much of the wealth as we can generate from it is retained locally, and that means local businesses, and but it's more than that. That's more than just skills. That's skills, business support, facilities, and things of that sort.
Yeah, I totally agree with that last point. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Is to actually keep as much of this wealth locally. And I just, as part of that, obviously, earlier in the meeting we we're talking about, you know, setting in train discussions around the town centre and the master plan. And I just, you know, wondered if you've got any thoughts about that, because I think, you know, the reality is that we are kind of moving to a different model of retail in the town centre, and that will mean there's less shops and there'll be less, you know, there'll be these premises that actually are kind of going begging potentially, that could be used as spaces for startups and so on. And maybe, hopefully, we'll have a transmission where people from the university will stay in the town and actually, you know, set up businesses within the town, and that would add amazing amount of vibrancy and obviously create new economic opportunities. So I just wondered actually whether, you know, in the discussions we have going forward around the master plan and the town centre consultation, we could actually slide this issue into those discussions so that it's actually put on the agenda as part of the remit. It could be quite an interesting kind of angle to it. So.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Sue. It's a really good presentation, and thank you for all the information you're providing. Yeah, I did have a look into this a little bit this morning, and a lot of us know about the internet, but we don't necessarily know around the infrastructure of putting this, you know, putting broadband together. So it was quite interesting, and just reading the stuff from the full fibre programme. It is full fibre, right? I've got that right. Yeah, sounds like some sort of breakfast cereal, doesn't it? Really. But you know, having read about that. You know, the £30 million investment that's going on, and where we are going to be one of the first towns to benefit from this full fibre access. So I think very exciting. I know some roads are getting a bit messed up in the town, but what could happen with it is actually quite exciting, and we need to talk that up a little bit more, knowing that our town could benefit from before a number of other towns across the world, actually not just in this country. One thing it did say was that once this programme's done, every home and business in Huddersfield will have access to full fibre. Is that correct?
Yeah, it covers 9 ward areas. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. It really is. And what kind of timeline are we working to on that?
By 2021.
Excellent. You know, big thumbs up. I think that's really, really exciting news. Just want to say a couple of other points. In terms of the skills investment, that's going to be crucial here, isn't it? So with this digital infrastructure in place, we need to make sure we've got the skills locally to benefit from that. So just what I know it's a tough one, isn't it, really? But in terms of what everyone's saying here, we need to make sure with this amount of investment going in that our people are able to benefit from it. And, you know, areas like mine and like Judith said in Amber, we don't want people left behind, really, because I think this could mean so much. There could be so much potentially, and young people are growing up differently to the way we are. So the way they're able to tap into digital and media, you know, is just amazing. I know my 9-year-old cousin knows more about IT and how to use an iPad and all that than I do. So I think that's going to be really key. And if you could just say a little bit about that. Just on that, I think one of the issues with, although it could lead to more jobs, it could lead to better skilled jobs, what we also potentially are going to be dealing with is automation, and how that might impact people actually, you know, huge, you know, scale of loss of jobs because of that in maybe warehouse and distribution. So how are we going to make sure people who have perhaps worked a long time in one industry, you know, to get them back on the road? Because going forward, that's what we're going to be dealing with. The chances of someone working in one job for 30 years, that's going, right? So my dad worked in a mill his whole life, you know, and that was his job. Now, if he was made redundant because those jobs were going automated, I'd think, gosh, you know, how tough would that be for him? So if you could just say a little bit about that, because there are some risks with this as well, isn't
Okay, so, like, I love these multiple questions because I have to make loads of notes about what. So, thinking... I know they've got previous because it was like this with the Employment Skills Plan. So, interesting, going back to town centres, digital and discussions about the master planning, the team were involved in those discussions. And what's really quite interesting, I'm not responsible sort of for town centre businesses, sort of those retail side, but clearly I have an interest because of the businesses. And we're thinking about different ways of the generating the sort of the local supply chain. So thinking about click and collect and thinking about the spaces in the town centre and thinking about new start-up space and things like that. So that's definitely been thought of. Yeah, that's sort of part of the horizon scanning piece. That's just one line in this high-level action plan. So that was one thing. The most connected town in the UK is definitely something that we're going to be talking about. If you know, it's part of our story. It's part of what we'll be using to attract inward investment and shout about Huddersfield and Kirklees as a total. So. In fact, we have a new service director who is going to be speaking at a conference in April around our ambition and our collaboration around becoming a smart town, smart region. Yeah, automation. Wow. Yeah, this is where you can't have one plan sitting in isolation of another, because clearly all the work that's taking place on employment and skills around the change in sort of those skills and qualifications that are required for the future, they sit together. So automation, yeah, could remove jobs, but then it might push us towards more higher skills. So it might be about reskilling in terms of programming is what I'm thinking about there. So somebody who might have previously been, I don't know, on an automating line, a manufacturing line, could be processing and maybe inputting it into that same line. We've got to have a skills ladder in place to be able to try and move those individuals. But part of that is about them understanding the future and what that means for them, as well as the businesses understanding what it means. The other thing is there will always be low-skilled jobs needed. So one of the worries, we've got is there's a gap. There could be a gap emerging, so there may still be the need for individuals in the next 10 years at least to be delivering sort of low-skilled jobs. But yeah, it's about a skills ladder for me. Is that automation and robotics for the future?
I'm pleased the discussion has sort of come around. The skills dimension of this is absolutely key, and the point's been made by others. And not least, when you refer to people who might lose their jobs, I've seen this happen in the North East. People affected by the mining industry, people affected by the coal industry, and see the impact. Unless you prepare people properly for a fundamental change, that fundamental change is coming. Therefore, in the skills strategy, not only must we prepare kids for the future of where the skills and challenges will be, but also to reskill, to retrain people. We've never done this before in this country, and it's critical that we do, because a lot of people are going to have to retrain and it's going to be an integral part of what companies do in the future, not merely initially train, it's retraining all the time, and getting that culture of training across within the companies.
Mark, sorry that you've had to wait for a while to ask your question. Can I bring you in?
I was just interested in the finance of it. It seems to me that it's going to be a lot of money. And as an ordinary, miserable taxpayer, I'd just like to know whether it's going to be me that pays for it. Well, I suppose it is. I noticed that you've got 30 million investment from City Fibre Vodafone. I presume that's technical stuff. They won't be digging up the roads, will they? In that 30 million? Wow. Well, I noticed that the government scheme provides vouchers, £2,500 for business and £500 for a householder. That makes me suspect that if I want fibre, I'm going to have to pay for it myself with perhaps a £500 grant. Now, being half a mile away from the nearest phone centre box cabinet, I could see that all being very expensive, and if I have to pay for it, well, I won't, because I'm quite happy with my 6 megs. I don't want to watch films. But I'm very interested, everybody's calling out that 30 million is supposed to cover it. It won't cover the expense of coming out to rural areas. Not a chance.
So the 30 million is purely a commercial investment by City Fibre to bring full fibre to those 9 ward areas that we spoke about originally. In terms of the gigabit broadband voucher scheme that you referred to, businesses and residents can aggregate those vouchers. So if there were a community that had businesses within it that wanted to access fibres and access the gigabit scheme, by aggregating those vouchers, you would get to a point, hopefully, where actually it would be affordable to get the full fibre to those premises. In terms of monetary investment generally, it's very much a commercially led system, very much so. So it's about us working very closely with suppliers to encourage them to our district and to get them to spend their money here, as we have done with City Fibre.
Totally different question. I was just a bit puzzled to read this sentence, HD TVs are no longer manufactured. Now, I've seen them advertised. I mean, what does it, why does it say that?
That was part of some research. I understand that even though they're being sold still, that actually manufacturing of HD TVs has ceased because the technology is moving forward so quickly that the spec of the TVs has changed. So you may still be able to purchase those TVs, but I understand that manufacturers have moved on to that next stage of TV. I mean, I could always check whether that is absolutely correct, but that's what I'm led to believe, yeah.
Can I just say a couple of things before we move on? I take your point about the more rural areas who may miss out under something like the City Fibre scheme. And I think, really, as a local authority, we should be thinking about how we can support people living in those areas to think about how they might be able to aggregate vouchers and things to gain better access. So the council are not going to be doing it, it will be these other providers. But I think our role is to provide advice to people where they may be in that situation. And on the TV thing, one of the reasons people became so cross about it where I live in the middle of Linthwaite was because they were buying new TVs, and because a lot of the houses like mine have only got 2 megabytes per second, they just wouldn't work. So they opened the box, plugged in the new TV, nothing. So it's already happening, it's a problem. Right, Judith.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask some questions about the digital exclusion. What are the 5 basic digital skills that are needed? And I did think 23% of adults seems quite high that they don't have these 5 basic skills. Do we know what the breakdown is on age on that? So we have talked about younger people, schools and colleges, people getting retrained. What about older people that are needing these skills, particularly when we're looking at the transformation of health and using digital skills? Just wondered where we were going with that.
So in relation to older skills, I suppose we're working with some of the providers for them to support us in delivering digital literacy classes. But we also have, in terms of adult and community learning, we have some provision there to try and the breakdown of these skills I had noted somewhere, but I have failed to keep a note of where they are. But we can come back with the detail of the site where we obtained that from, because I had it listed somewhere and I cannot locate it at the moment. Do you know it?
It might be these. Managing information, communicating, transacting, problem solving and creating, and those are digital skills at all levels, so it's not just young people, that's very much focused on adults as well. No. No, we don't at this stage. Yeah.
Can I just make a further comment? Can I just make a further comment? Because then going further down about the 42% of Kirklees adults, only 42% of Kirklees adults have used these 5 basic skills in the last 3 months. I thought that was incredible, really, that only 42% have used those skills. Are we going to put anything through the library network for the older people to increase the skills?
That would be me, yeah. I can't say at the moment because, as you know, we're in a service redesign as we speak. So, well, we'll have to see if we can get some money. We're more than happy to put digital skills into libraries. But I mean, don't forget, in every library we have public access points for IT, and the staff that's available, all the volunteers, help those wanting to use it as much as possible. I don't think we're going to turn them into Bill Gates overnight, but the people who do come in seem to use those quite easily and readily with the information that can be given from the people who are in there. So it could be something we look at in the future, absolutely. As you well know, my dream is libraries will be pure, proper community hubs as well as libraries, and we deal with lots and lots of services. So we can take it. I'll take it back the next time we have a meeting. But something worth looking at. Sorry. Yeah, can you do that, Jess?
Yeah, well, I have some good news there. Yeah. So, in our relationship with City 5, but City 5 themselves are incredibly keen to support digital inclusion, and they are already in discussion with our libraries team. They are supporting coding workshops, and are currently looking at other things that they may be able to support delivery of.
Sue, I think you'd like to comment before we move on. That was it. Yeah. And I think you raised some really important points there, Judith. I know just from my own personal experience within my family, elderly people can find it really hard to access things. But I've also got some relatives who've got learning difficulties, and things like when they become unemployed, trying to access the services through job centres and things. You can't do it if you haven't got digital skills. Even if somebody plonks a computer in front of you, it's difficult. Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah, and claiming benefits as well. That's all done online these days. Basically, I just strongly support what Rob was saying earlier, and others were saying about that idea of aggregating funding. It seems like an amazing opportunity, actually. I just wonder, maybe, I don't know if we've got a really specific plan to identify the areas where we do have these problem areas, and then somehow go out to those communities and say, look, you have a chance here to do this, and take it while you can, because these things often don't last a bit. But I just wanted to ask about point 1.8, because you on page 11, because I think this is a really important point, actually, about moving forward in terms of services. I just wondered if you could give some examples and say a bit more about, say, the health and social care aspect of the digital transformation, because it does seem to me that there are tremendous opportunities here in terms of health and social care. I just wondered if you've got any specific examples of anything that's already going on or that you would envisage developing in the future. So,
did you mention what 1.18 is? Yeah.
1.8.
Oh, 1.8. No, it's okay. Sorry, I couldn't. That's okay. Yeah, nothing specific. I suppose for us delivering the digital plan at the moment with the digital partnership, we're just creating sort of that high-level plan at the moment, and we're clear that we know that this work is taking place. I suppose on a personal level, when you're thinking about the transformation of services, I know that, say, for health, we were just talking about trouble accessing internet, hospital appointments, GP appointments, everything is over the internet. But no, again, we can perhaps come back with some specifics for you and pay particular attention to that when we're developing the more in-depth plan. Yeah.
Just bring quickly on that, I'm a big fan of what you loosely call Alexa, but which is voice-activated stuff. And we've already had conversations, as you know, we released and it's only the bins, I know, but we've got the bin information stored now on Alexa, and we are one of the first local authorities to get that approval from the manufacturer and operate that system. But when you think about it, we're only in early conversation on it, because it's one of those things that once you start thinking about what you could provide through voice-activated internet connection, it's huge. And what's really important is to get the infrastructure in place for that to work, and then we can really go to town on that. I think there's loads of things we can do around that. So you won't need necessarily the skills, you'll just be able to say to something, do it. And an example we've already talked about, if you're a single person living at home and you have a fall, yes, we give them care pendants, that sort. Sometimes you fall in a position where you can't do that. If you have an Alexa, you can say, Alexa, phone my daughter, Alexa, phone an ambulance. So there's a whole world out there, and every time we discuss this, all we end up doing is creating more questions and answers. Because there's so many more things you can do with it. If I was an example, and if there's any builders watching, why would you put light switches in houses anymore? There's miles of wire in the house. You could just have a system where you go and switch the lights on. There's loads of things you can do with this, and I think we're just scratching the surface at the moment. But we need this infrastructure in place for all this to work. And it's important that we do tackle those, what I call white spots. But if we can tackle those, we can really do great things, I think, through voice protocols and do away with all this technology. Talking to something doesn't frighten anybody. And that also helps blind people, because this stuff doesn't really help blind people. So we can include more and more people if we develop more of that technology. I'm really excited by it. I think it's great stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And there are also opportunities for businesses to develop and exploit those things.
Yeah, thanks. I think we've also got to bear in mind the report that was on Breakfast TV this week about the security concerns for voice activated. They were showing somebody who had Alexa, Google or one of those, and how easy it is to hack into it and take control, open people's doors, various other things. And as someone who struggles to get Kate, that's the Kirklees automated telephone exchange, to work. Well, yeah, probably don't understand the Yorkshire accent, so before we go too far down that line, let's get our own in-house system sorted.
I've got to agree with Martin on the when you're ringing in. There's something about, yeah, I mean, I always get put through to the wrong person or the wrong department. So if there's anything we can do on that, Jess and Sue, please, could that be a priority? Yeah.
I'm not sure how often it doesn't work. I think there's lots of people, lots of misnomers around it. It works perfectly every time.
Yeah, I do understand, Graham. I think perhaps for some accents it's a bit... For me, it's a tricky one for me. I can't... Yeah, exactly. That's...
We both got Huddersfield.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I just, Sue, I just wanted to quickly ask about how we fit this in terms of the city region and with West Yorkshire Combined Authority, because really the opportunities at city region level are immense out there about how we can work together, how we might have specific zones in different parts of the region, and that might mean some of our people travelling, or it might mean some people from different areas coming to us. So just making sure strategically that we're working out where we think the key zone should be at a city region level and how we can pool that funding. I know you mentioned the conference in April, there's the Leeds Digital Festival in April, so I'm hoping that people from Kirklees will be attending that and going along and showing what we're doing. And I understand there's a great Northern Conference in February as well, done by the Northern Partnership thing, the one that Osborne set up. So just thinking about how we're sort of connecting with those sort of programmes really at that city region level, especially with Channel 4 as well, there's opportunities there.
The digital enterprise programme, I'm wondering how well set up we are to make use of that, because I think that is the kind of advice to businesses that we're really going to need to make sure that businesses take on the opportunities. So it links very much with what you said.
I haven't come prepared with the stats from Digital Enterprise Programme, and I think we've benefited well from that, but I'd need to double check because I'm... Oh, have you got them? Brilliant.
Hello again. We make a good team. Yeah. So we've got, so far, 73 businesses engaged with formally around growth and connection vouchers. So that the growth vouchers focus on technology, so new technology that businesses might use to incorporate to transform their business through digital solutions. The connection vouchers are literally connecting and improving their broadband speeds. That's about £266,000 to date, and many other businesses have benefited from the workshops, the masterclasses and the mentoring that is offered through the Digital Enterprise Programme too. We sit on the board and are very active in promoting that to businesses within the district. And in fact, Digital Enterprise are holding their Go Live digital conference at John Smith Stadium, not next Monday, the Monday afterwards. Jackie will be opening that conference. We'll have the business hub stand there. Our Works Better team will be there, and we'll be able to engage with the businesses that come along to that event too.
Discussion. And I think this is very exciting. I think there are tremendous opportunities. We're actually in a good place now. We've got to take advantage of that. Yeah, so it's a real challenge for us as an authority. And thank you, Graham and Peter, as well, for your contributions. Okay, thank you. Right, so just the last couple of items. So the work programme, the next up and coming, well, run them both together really, 5 and 6. The next meeting is on Thursday the 21st of March, and we've got 2 main items on the work programme. The main one, I think, is going to be the air quality strategy, which I think is a big issue, cuts across a lot of different things. But we're also going to get an update on the implementation of the housing strategy. So it will be interesting to see how things are progressing in the light of the strategy that we have discussed on a couple of occasions earlier. And it will also, I think, be really interesting to discuss that in the light of the fact that by the time we come to this meeting, we should have a local plan in place and how those things actually interact. Okay, so that's about it. Anybody, anything else to raise? Okay, so thanks everybody for attending and thanks for participating so well in the discussion. And I hope you are able to take some